Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. On Monday, the 31st of March, we got news that Marine Le Pen, one of the leaders of the French party, the National Rally, or the Rassemblement National, had been found guilty of embezzlement and had been banned from political office for 5 years, and I think she'd been given some kind of prison sentence of 4 years and had been fined €100,000 or something like that. And this was a bit of an earthquake, and it also sounds completely crazy in a way. It's like the system has gone crazy, the collective has gone crazy, and it's a very interesting piece of news that we need to talk about. Now, I always have to say, when I'm talking about the subject of France, that I don't actually really know what I'm talking about. I know very little about French politics. I'm not French. I don't speak French. And so it's difficult for me, but I do have to give it a go because it's important news. And I do want to have a look at Marine Le Pen's horoscope. I want to also look at Jourdain Bardella's horoscope. He's another leader of the National Rally, and I have to sort of ask, what does it mean for for France, and where is it all going? And it's difficult to answer that question, and I think it is about something in the collective going on, which is bigger than France. One thinks that it's a court decision, an objective court decision. Well, I think the French court system is pretty political as far as I can gather. Additionally, you have to think about unconscious processes. I think there is something in the unconscious that knows what's going to happen sooner or later and is doing everything it can to resist it. You know how things are going to work out just by looking at people's behavior, and you arguably don't need astrology. But before I grapple with French politics, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. So here is the horoscope for today, set for noon, New York time, April the 2nd. And I should say, if you happen to like this video, I'd be very grateful if you were indeed to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. Anyway, the moon is in Gemini. There it is, moon is at 11 Gemini, making a conjunction to Jupiter. And it also is making a sextile to Pluto, and we have a sextile between the moon and the sun. So that's pretty good, I think. It's always good to have moon conjunct Jupiter, especially when you've got moon sextile sun as well. So for many of us, today might be quite useful. It might even be a bit of a relief. There's a bit of space. We've got room to breathe with the moon in Gemini. When the moon was in Taurus, things could get a bit stuck, a little bit too intense, and we might have been holding on to things too tightly. And now that the moon is in Gemini, we have more freedom, and we've got the freedom to think, and we've got the freedom to talk, and we've got the freedom to imagine with the moon in Gemini, and we can consider the various possibilities in front of us. And there isn't actually so much going on today. I mean, those three aspects, moon trine Pluto, moon sextile sun, moon conjunct Jupiter, really that's what's happening today. And so that does mean that some of the pressure just might feel that it's subsiding. And as I always say with moon sextile sun, it's harmonious. The sun and the moon, the male and female principles. They're in sextile, and you've got Moon in Gemini, sextile Sun in Aries. Aries and Gemini are two signs that get on quite well with each other, and there's not much competition between them. They are different elements. So air, Moon in an air sign, Sun in a fire sign. So they're not trying to fight for the same space, but they do complement each other. Aries is about action. Moon is about thinking. Sometimes Aries can be concerned that people are thinking too much, and on the other hand, the Gemini can be quite into just contemplating things without necessarily taking the initiative. But sometimes Gemini gets a bit bored and needs the action that Aries can provide, whereas Gemini can provide the ideas that Aries sometimes lacks. I'm not making any comment or statement about Aries as a sign. People who have their Sun in Aries or their Aries rising, quite capable of having lots of wonderful ideas. But it just underlines the point that the Moon sextile Sun is a fortunate and healthy aspect, especially because Jupiter is involved. The Sun is starting to make a sextile to Jupiter, and I think by the weekend that aspect is exact. Plus, Moon conjunct Jupiter is one of the most fortunate aspects in the book, and that makes sense. The Moon is about action, it's about process, it's about the way people are responding, and it's making a conjunction to Jupiter. Jupiter might be in Gemini, which is in its detriment, but Jupiter is a mutual reception to Mercury, so the ruler of the Moon is Mercury, because the ruler of the sign in which the Moon is in is Mercury, Moon being in Gemini, and Mercury Jupiter a mutual reception. So that does actually make that Moon Jupiter conjunction, as far as I am concerned, fairly fortunate. But it is a Moon in Gemini day. There are planets in Pisces, but we don't have to get overwhelmed by emotionality. We're able to think, and we're able to sort of work out what is the right course of action. Now, one thing though, the Moon has left Taurus, so that means that yet again we're in a situation where there aren't any personal or social planets in Earth signs. It's just Uranus in Taurus, and this situation has been rather ongoing, and it's still a bit of time before the Sun moves into Taurus, before the Taurus season gets going. So we've got over a fortnight before the Sun moves into Taurus. And I wonder, what this says about the world in which we're living right now, with this lack of Earth. It seems that a lot of people are ungrounded, and they're having ideas which are not based on reality, and that may say something about politics and politicians and thinking about what they can do and trying to avoid the issue. It's often said with Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, with his Sun in Virgo. He should be Sun in Virgo. That's a nice grounded sign, but Keir Starmer is not paying any attention, as far as many people can see, to the British economy. He likes to fly around and worry about Ukraine and other things, anything but the British economy, and that might also reflect in some of his ideas about sending British troops to Ukraine. And it's not just about Ukraine, it's just about this lack of grounding, a lack of concern about what is possible. We can have all the ideas in the world, but are they actually going to happen? Can they happen? And if we try to put these ideas into action without considering the practicalities of things, then we might get ourselves into trouble. So that is the position for New York, with the Moon at 11:12 Gemini at noon. If we switch the focus to Sydney, Australia, as a representative of Australasia, the moon is still in Gemini, though this morning, especially if you're in New Zealand, the moon is in late Taurus. So if you are in Australasia, then the day might have a slow start, as the moon is in the process of changing sign, though maybe you'll be able to pick up on the moon in late Taurus making a sextile to Mercury and Venus. And so if you want to be nice to people or foster particular relationships just by a quick conversation, saying something nice, and you are in Australasia, then focus on this morning, and then once the moon moves into Gemini, sometime in the morning, then there will be that changeover. But I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between the experience of those of you in Australasia with those of you in the United States, for example. And then there is the heliocentric picture. So here it is, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and there aren't any direct aspects of any great note that I noticed, though there are a few midpoints. Mars is making a conjunction to the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint. Remember, this is heliocentric, and so with Mars, Mercury on a Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, if we really make the effort, we can get our message across. And of course, geocentrically, we've got the moon in Gemini. So in fact, you could say that that's quite complementary to what's going on geocentrically. And with Mars on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, if we've got something we need to say, it's important we say it, especially if it's of a collective nature, then we shouldn't hold back. Also, there is an outer planet configuration going on, and it's slower. It's not necessarily just about today, but I still feel I should point it out. And it is the fact that there's Neptune, and Neptune is on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. And this is hyper-collective. No inner planets involved. And it's heliocentric, so that makes it even more collective. And so Neptune on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint, well, it is about ideas about how one can assert one's authority in a sort of maybe dramatic way. So Uranus-Pluto is about power and feeling that one can exercise one's power in such a way that gets real results. But then you've got Neptune. Neptune might be delusions about what you can achieve. And, I'm thinking about this court in France banning Marine Le Pen from standing for political office. And that's a bit of a Neptune on a Uranus-Pluto decision. And this court actually believes it can make a difference. Now, as far as objectivity is concerned, objectivity, you have to throw that out of a window when you're looking at what's going on with the collective at the moment. You think that judges are people who are objective. Judges are never objective, as far as I can see. It doesn't matter where you are. I'm in the United States, and you look at judges in the county I'm in, and you look at the decisions they make, and I have my real concerns about the objectivity of local decisions. And yet then you just have to look that judges here, they are elected, and at least at the lower level, and they get endorsed. If you want to be elected, you have to be endorsed, and very often you're endorsed by local politicians and local interests. And so if you need to get endorsed as a judge, then how are your decisions going to be objective? It's because you need to get re-elected, and likewise at the higher level in France, you can't assume that the judges who sentenced Marine Le Pen are objective. They have an agenda, and yeah, they're part of a collective. And you might be seeing this at work with heliocentrically with Neptune on a Uranus-Pluto midpoint, delusions about being able to have a control, delusions about being able to transform the political system. So, those are a few thoughts about the heliocentric chart. I mean, by the way, I'm just trying to be objective. I'm not expressing any of my political views. It's just how the planets are, working things through. And so I don't really need to say anything more about the heliocentric picture. So now I want to consider the astrology of the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. Aries. Aries, things feel better today. When the moon was in Taurus, you were quite powerful, and you were able to concentrate on the things that mattered, especially those things of a material nature. But it wasn't quite you. You didn't feel entirely happy with the way things were going, and you might have felt that your freedom of action was being restrained, and there might also have been a feeling of boredom, and we don't want Aries to be bored. I mean, Aries is an action-orientated sign, and with the moon now moving into Gemini, you start to feel that there's more things going on. There's more to stimulate you, and you're getting ideas, and you're able to marry these ideas with a plan of action. And that is about the moon in Gemini making a sextile to the sun in Aries. So moon in Gemini is about ideas, thinking about different possibilities, not necessarily being tied to any one course of action, and being able to consider alternatives. And that's always a good idea, especially if you're an Aries. And then Sun in Aries, that's action. Sun is exalted in Aries. So Moon sextile Sun allows you to start to think things through and work out what your next move is, and be able to discuss things, but not discuss things forever. Make some decisions and just go for it. And if you do decide to take any initiative today, then the chances of success are probably higher than average, and that is because the moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. So the moon, having made a sextile to the sun, moves on. Did I say moon sextile Jupiter? So the sun is sextile Jupiter, so let's get that right. So the sun is sextile Jupiter, the moon is sextile the sun, so the moon makes a sextile to the sun, and then it makes a conjunction to Jupiter. So things are working out for you. And, additionally, you're able to come over as a really rather powerful person. And one reason for that is that if we looked at the heliocentric chart, Mars is conjunct the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint. So Mercury-Jupiter is about how you talk, how you bring out your ideas, and people are prepared to listen, not just because you have great force behind you, but also because what you say sounds interesting, sounds exciting. And, whatever's going on today, there is stuff going on today. Isn't Trump going to be making some announcement about tariffs that everyone is excited or concerned about? But whatever's going on, you can see things in the best possible light, and really, that's what everyone wants, and you can make things happen. So if for any reason, Aries, you're not comfortable with the way things are, then you can create change. And you don't have to create change with violence. You can just do it through the power of your personality. And I don't think you're even going to make enemies, because people are interested in new ideas. You can come over as new idea. You can come up with new ideas. You can also listen to other people's new ideas, and you can work out what needs to be done. So overall, Aries, looks to me like a really good day. You're going to have a certain charm as well, because Venus is starting actually to make a trine to Mars. And that Venus trine Mars, by the way, should be quite fortunate for relationships, whatever the relationship is about. You know how to get on with people. But I'll talk about that in a day or two's time when that Venus-Mars conjunction becomes exact. Taurus, the moon is now out of your sign, so the Taurus emphasis has gone. At least for the moment. It's not a permanent situation, because in just over a fortnight the sun will move into Taurus. The Taurus season will eventually get going, but right now there is less emphasis on your sign, and you're maybe feeling a little bit detached. That you don't really want to get involved with too much action. It's just doesn't feel right. And if you are surrounded by other people, especially if you don't know them very well, then it may be that things don't quite work out as you expect. Not because anything violent or dramatic happens. It's just a question of how comfortable you feel. Though Venus is still making a conjunction to the North Node, and that means that your social abilities are absolutely fine. So even if you don't feel like mixing with other people, you still come over as being a pleasant person. People will enjoy your company, but there is a question of whether actually you enjoy other people's company. And if you actually look at what's going on, Venus it's making a conjunction to Mercury, which helps you communicate. It helps you come over as being a nice person, but Venus is also starting to make a conjunction to Saturn. And in fact, Venus is on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. And when we see that Mercury-Saturn pairing, we immediately think, well, restricted communication, cutting communication off, perhaps saying goodbye. And that may be how you feel, that there are certain people, certain situations that you've just had enough of. It's not because you dislike anyone, you just feel that it's time to move on. So don't feel guilty about that, and don't be dramatic about it. So I know that Taurus is a fixed sign. It likes to stick with things, and sometimes Taurus can stick with things that are well beyond their sell-by date, because you are a reliable, consistent person. You don't want to let anyone down, and the future is always unstable, and so it's best to just stick with what you know. But sometimes You don't want to stick with what you know. And before stepping into the new, you might have to divest yourself of the old, which is why it might be a time to say a few farewells. You don't have to say goodbye to everyone. It may not be people, it may be situations, it may be places. But if you distance yourself from one thing, you'll be creating a situation where you can really start to embrace the new. And another thing going on today is that the moon is making a sextile to the sun, and it's making a conjunction to Jupiter. And this conjunction between the moon and Jupiter is lucky. It's lucky for everyone, and that includes you. And this luck might have a financial nature. So think about money, think about what you want financially, and also think about what might have been denied to you in the past. You might have been trying to get hold of some money or something of value, and you hadn't been successful. And it's worth trying again with Moon conjunct Jupiter. So, all things being equal, good luck is on your side. And if you want to be a beneficiary of this good luck, you've got to put yourself in a position where it can actually happen. In other words, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a lottery ticket. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that you buy a lottery ticket. Even with Moon conjunct Gemini, your chances of winning are going to be almost zero. So I'm not saying you've really got an increased chance of winning a lottery, but I'm talking about other situations where you have a go at getting something. You have another go at asking for money or asking for a pay rise, whatever you need, or even another go at looking for something of financial value. If something is lost, have another go, see if you can find it this time around. So that Moon-Jupiter conjunction, it's there, it's available to you. You don't have to take advantage of this conjunction, but it might be a good idea to just give it a go, see what happens. I don't think that you've got much to lose. Gemini, things are looking pretty hopeful, I would have said. You do feel that there is some action, that you're actually having an impact. That can often be a problem for Geminis. Geminis can have lots of ideas, but does anyone listen to those ideas? Can you actually see results in terms of the world changing because of your ideas, because of what you say? And that lack of an impact can drive some Geminis completely crazy. Well, it can drive this Gemini completely crazy. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. But today we do have the moon in Gemini, and the moon is making a sextile to the sun, and it's making a conjunction to Jupiter. And I would regard this as being entirely fortunate. And you should feel that things are really moving. And in fact, the first aspect the moon makes when it moves into Gemini is it's a second aspect, because the moon makes a sextile to Neptune. But the second aspect it makes is a trine to Pluto. And this trine to Pluto, you're going to feel it particularly if you're in Australia or New Zealand or East Asia, but still the moon is in Gemini, Pluto is in Aquarius. There's a trine relationship between the moon and between the moon in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. And with this trine, you are aware of your own power and your power to transform. And then the moon moves on, makes that sextile to the sun, and you just feel a sense of oneness with moon sextile sun. And if you make the effort, you can get on very well with other people. Your social skills are going to be close to the top of the range, and this is especially the case, when the moon moves on to make that conjunction to Jupiter. So moon conjunct Jupiter in your sign is about how you present yourself, and you can present yourself as someone who is powerful and present, and you've got lots of good ideas, and there's also something rather exciting about you. You just give the impression that you can make things happen, and so people are going to listen to you. And remember that as far as relationships are concerned, Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception. Mercury and Jupiter are in each other's signs. I know I've said this on numerous occasions, but I'm just saying it again, at the very least to make you happy, just to suggest that things really are good for you right now. Even though Mercury is retrograde, don't worry too much about Mercury being retrograde, because Mercury is it's in mutual reception to Jupiter, and the moon is making a conjunction to Jupiter. So that allows you to get on with lots of different people, and your social skills are extremely good. Your ability to make new connections is good, and if you want to get close to someone, if you want to form some kind of union, it can be a temporary union, you and someone else getting together for a purpose. If you want to do that, then you can do that very well. And if you want to work with another person or with a group of people on some joint enterprise, now might be the time to do it. Again, it doesn't matter that Mercury is retrograde. Mercury is actually today. Mercury is conjunct the North Node, and that's in Pisces. And Mercury conjunct the North Node really does emphasize the fact that you're able to just get on with just about anyone. Additionally, the North Node is about direction, what your direction should be at the moment. Mercury conjunct the North Node is in Pisces. That is a very ambitious section of your chart. And so with Mercury conjunct the North Node, you should, as far as possible, be trying to make an impact. Don't feel you have to hold anything back. And if you've got something to say, then say it. Even if you're speaking in a situation where you feel that you're at a disadvantage, or perhaps you're talking to people who are higher up in the hierarchy, whatever that hierarchy might be, people are interested in what you have to say, and your choice of words will be excellent. So Gemini, it's just very important that you don't doubt yourself, and you're just there, and you're present, and you are at the center of things. Cancer. Cancer, there are many ways of getting what you want, and you don't always have to take the direct approach. You might want to take a detour, you might want to take the scenic route, and that's okay. There isn't a rush, and if you go about things in your way, whatever your way might be, then I'm really confident that you'll arrive at your destination in good shape, and you will feel very satisfied with whatever you've accomplished. And you certainly shouldn't be in awe of someone else's views. There is a standard way of doing things, and the standard way of doing things is not necessarily for you. You have your own approach, and if you adopt your own approach, you're going to be absolutely fine. In other words, Cancer, it's important to be an individual. And if you want to be an individual, and if you don't want to be criticized, then sometimes the best approach is to just keep quiet. You know what you need to do, you know how you're going to do it, and you make a success of it. Now, to put some astrological flesh on that, the moon is making a sextile to the sun, and that moon sextile sun is about harmony. It's about you being at one with yourself, and also being at one with whatever your ambitions might be. And you just know how you want to get there. And it doesn't have to be explained. It's all just very easy and it's effortless. And the less you explain, the less effort there is. And the moon, having made a sextile to the sun, it makes a conjunction to Jupiter. And moon conjunct Jupiter is an aspect that is usually very fortunate. And Jupiter may be in Gemini, but it is in mutual reception to Mercury, and so you are able to be successful, and you're going to be luckier than average. Your luck might not be obvious. Your luck might be found when you're in the background. If you're right in the center of things, that might not be where you're most lucky. You're lucky when you're looking at things in a different way, when you're slightly away from the crowd, not isolated from the crowd. It's not an isolated day. You can be as isolated as you want to be. You have the choice, Cancer. So Cancer, it's a day that externally is somewhat understated. In other words, if you were to be observed, then it might not seem that you're doing very much. You might not appear on anyone's radar, but from your point of view, there are definitely things going on, and there should be things going on. And if you just go about your business, decide what you want to do, then I don't think that there's any reason why you can't actually be very successful. Also, Cancer, I should point out that Venus is starting to make a trine to Mars. So Venus is going retrograde at the moment, and it's starting to make that trine to Mars. And Mars is in your sign. Mars is in Cancer, and that Venus trine Mars has a couple of manifestations. I think, in a general sense, it does make you more attractive than usual, and it gives you a definite charisma, and some people do find it appealing. And if you want to be appealing, then remember what I've just said. You don't have to make too much of an effort. It's just obvious, and through other people you can make discoveries, and you can get new ideas. At the moment, that is really important, Cancer. Mercury's in Pisces. It's conjunct the North Node, and that might be saying, Cancer, that you shouldn't be satisfied with existing knowledge. This is a theme with all these planets in Pisces. We've still got Mercury, Venus, Saturn, North Node in Pisces. You shouldn't be satisfied with the existing way of doing things, with the existing level of knowledge. You can always find out more. And with Venus trine Mars, you can start getting in touch with people who are in some respects different from you, have a different perspective, and you can benefit from them. And it may just be a brief meeting. It may be something more longer term, more serious, but whatever that contact is, it can really give you a new view which can make you happier and more successful. Leo, I would have said that it looks like being a pretty good day. The sun is your ruler. The sun is actually starting to make a sextile to Jupiter. Now, that sextile to Jupiter is not exact, but it's getting closer and closer. I think that Sun-Jupiter sextile becomes exact over the weekend. Would that be through? Yeah, over the weekend. You've got Sun sextile Jupiter, and that is going to make you fortunate, and that is going to really allow you to, show yourself off in the best possible light. And with a sextile, you should use quite a close orb. So 3 degrees away, it's still quite mild, but you're starting to pick up on the good fortune of that sextile. Additionally, the moon is bringing it into focus, because one of the aspects we've got today is moon conjunct Jupiter. We also have moon sextile sun, and so ideally, Leo, you'll be feeling happy and centered, and you should feel that, by and large, you are on the right path, that you haven't made too many mistakes. Maybe things have been a little bit chaotic recently, but things are moving, and you're feeling pretty good about the future. You should be feeling good about the future. A lot of us can just feel negative for the sake of it, or in your case, you might be tempted to feel, it's all a lot of effort. You've got to really make things happen. You've got to make a special effort to make things happen. You've got to really force it. You might think that, but I don't think that is the right approach. You need to have a lighter touch. So, that might be a slight danger. Thinking that things are more difficult than they actually are, and you don't want to create self-fulfilling prophecies. And so if you have a light touch, you tell yourself that you've got it right. Even if you feel you've got it wrong, tell yourself you've got it right, that there couldn't be any other way for you to have arrived at where you are right now, and this is where you're supposed to be. And with that attitude, you will then recognize that you're in the perfect position. You have the opportunity, and you have the luck. Because today, Moon conjunct Jupiter is a lucky aspect. And when you're talking about good luck, you must never assume that good luck is just going to just appear from nowhere. Everything's going to be handed to you on a silver plate. It never works like that, or at least it hardly ever works like that. And you do have to make a little bit of an effort, and you have to keep pushing until you find the opportunity that you're looking for. Maybe it's an opportunity you're not looking for, but you have to keep looking for something, and then maybe you don't even know what you're looking for, but then you find it. And if you can have an active social life today, that would make things a lot easier. Moon conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, that is about movement. It's about moving from one place to another, one person to another, seeing what different people have to offer, listening to people's suggestions, and listening also to people's observations. And you just might hear something that makes all the difference, that you can immediately take advantage of. I don't mean take advantage of in a way that you win, another person loses. It's just taking advantage and making the most of what is available, and a lot can be available. And the more people around you, the more people you're in touch with, the better for everyone. And don't give up on anyone. Venus is starting to make a conjunction to Saturn. Now, that Venus conjunct Saturn is not exact today, but it's possible as Venus starts moving towards a conjunction to Saturn, that someone becomes a little more open with you. Perhaps they had appeared to be rather closed and distant, and you hadn't wanted to get too close. But don't give up. And even people who seem in a bad mood, who seem distracted, can suddenly open up. They can be welcoming if you just give them a chance. And so if any relationship you're in has recently run into a bit of trouble, or there's been a growing distance, now might be a time where you can close the gap. So that's another possibility for today. So Leo, just get on with it, and have a great time. Virgo, you should not doubt yourself at the moment. It is a good day. I mean, it's a good day for most of us, I think. And there may just be a feeling that, things really aren't as bad as they seemed. And, there is just so much negativity around. And with the moon making a conjunction to Jupiter, it's going to help all of us, regardless of our sign. And we've got to see the good in things, even if it seems to be impossible. But we can see the good in things, and we can see the opportunity. And you, Virgo, can certainly see the opportunity with the moon making a conjunction to Jupiter in Gemini. This is a time when you should be ambitious, and you should be thinking about what you would like to happen. What would you like to happen? And what can you do to actually make it happen? Because I think there's a great deal you can do. And if you're working today, then I think things should run very well. And you'll have just a natural flexibility which will be appreciated, and you can do lots of different things. Moon conjunct Jupiter in Gemini could be very good at multitasking, being able to do lots of different activities. Some of these activities you may not feel that you're particularly good at, but you give it a go and it actually works out. So Virgo, don't doubt yourself, though I'm not suggesting that you do something that you quite patently cannot do. I mean, don't overdo it. I mean, your limits, but your limits are wider than you realize. So try your hand at many different things, and avoid those three words, I don't know. They're the three words you should never utter. Well, certainly today you shouldn't. Even if you feel a little bit uncertain, you do know at some level the important things, the things that come up over the course of a day. You know enough. And even if you don't know the answer immediately, you can find out the answer. You can do some research. And by demonstrating that you do know, even if you don't necessarily fully know, you'll come over as being impressive, and I don't think that you will disappoint. Even if you have to do some research, in the end you'll find the answers, and you'll be able to do things new. You might actually try something out. You think you don't know what you're doing, and actually you make a brilliant success of it. So Virgo, resist that temptation to underestimate yourself, because today it's unnecessary. And additionally the moon is making a sextile to the sun in Aries, so you have hidden reserves of power which can see you through. It might be your unconscious or your higher self, or maybe you feel inexperienced, but maybe you did it in a previous incarnation. Who knows? But don't doubt yourself. That is important. And additionally, with Moon conjunct Jupiter, that should be very, very good for your social skills. Your social skills right now are really excellent. But again, it might not feel that they're excellent. You might have your doubts. You might have your doubts about other people. You may not feel you can't express yourself. And so you don't want to try. But actually, if you do try, you can immediately get results. And this particularly relates to, when you're dealing with people one-to-one. You just know how to be yourself, and there's something about you that's open and honest and welcoming that is really going to be appreciated. So, Virgo, if we wanted to give today a star rating, I'd be tempted to give it 5 stars out of 5. Doesn't necessarily mean it will be a 5-star day, but you can make it a 5-star day. Libra. Libra, usual reminder at the moment, Venus is still pretty close to the North Node, and with the Venus being close to the North Node, your social facility is pretty good, and you'll know how to be impressive, and people will like you. But Venus is starting to make a conjunction to Saturn. And in fact, today, we could probably say that Venus is pretty close to the Saturn North Node midpoint. It's actually because Venus is making a conjunction to Mercury, it's also making a conjunction to Saturn. Venus is on the Mercury-Saturn midpoint. So there is something a little bit Saturnine about today. Now, while it's true, Libra, that socially you're something of an expert. You're a Libran, and you know how to present yourself. You know how to get on with people. You have your doubts, and you may not feel that you want to get too close to anyone, and you might actually feel that it's a time when you need just a little bit of distance. And some people may just be too much of a good thing, and having some distance would be a good idea. And if that's the way you feel, Libra, if that's the way you feel, Libra, then I would go with it. I mean, you can trust yourself to make the right choices, and there are other things to consider. And this should not take away from the fact that it should actually be quite a fortunate day. And, we've got a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter, and this conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter allows you to see new possibilities and something you hadn't maybe been aware of before. And so you could say that if you want to be aware of something new, you have to distance yourself from something from the past. Now, that might be another person, a person who is holding you back, perhaps through the ties of obligation, and you break free from a particular person or a particular situation, you break free from it, and then new possibilities start to emerge. Yet the Moon is also making a sextile to the Sun, and the Sun is in Aries, your opposite sign. So Moon sextile Sun, at the very least, does indicate that your ability to relate is very good. Now, there are a lot of people who you probably don't want to relate to, but you shouldn't abandon everyone. So you can achieve your goals, you can find the new horizons that you might be looking for without having to break off contact with everyone. And Moon sextile Sun actually could be very good for relationships, could be very good for the right relationship. And perhaps you have to make a careful choice about who you spend your time with. You don't want to be held back. But if you spend the day on your own, you might be missing some opportunities. And so, do consider your social environment and your interpersonal environment, and do make the appropriate choices, especially as Venus is starting to make a trine to Mars. So Venus trine Mars, this aspect, it's not exact today, but it's getting closer and closer. That Venus-Mars trine is less than 3 degrees away. And so with that Venus trine Mars, that indicates that you and someone else are getting closer, or it could indicate that someone is on the horizon. And this someone could be part of your life for many different reasons. And it might indicate something to do with what you are trying to achieve. If there's something you really want to happen and you're really aiming for it, it might just be that you need someone's assistance, or you need to make a certain contact. And with this Venus trine Mars, I believe that it's actually possible for you to actually make this contact. So, look around at everyone around you and, decide who you want to get closer to, and also decide which people are maybe not especially useful right now. They might be useful later, but people come and go, and they sometimes come back. So don't feel that if you distance yourself from someone, you're never going to see them again. It just might be that different situations require a different cast of characters. Scorpio. Scorpio, you're able to reach deep down. You can really understand things at a very deep, intense level. Typical Scorpio. This is what Scorpio is all about. And you're helped by the fact that the moon is conjunct Jupiter. So we've got moon conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, and with this conjunction between the moon and Jupiter in Gemini, you have a chance to really understand things. And part of the reason you can understand things is because you can ask yourself the right questions, and you know where the problems are. The kind of problems that other people are ignoring. They want to pretend that it doesn't matter, that it's not, that you can just look away, but you know that you can't look away. And so perhaps that's how you should see today. You frame a question, and you then make it your business to answer that question. And you just go about it in a single-minded way. And you spend your time on it. If you have asked yourself a question, then don't let up. Just keep going. Every stone needs to be unturned, or turned. Is that right? Every stone needs to be turned. You need to find it, and it might feel that you're looking for a needle in a haystack. Sometimes it does, but if you go through that haystack, you will find that needle, and you can possibly do it today. And once you find what you're looking for, once you answer that question, then that is going to be quite liberating. And it just may be something you're stuck on, and you're just waiting to move on. And when you resolve that particular issue, and then that gives you a load of freedom. And these questions could have many different natures. They could be about money. That's absolutely possible. There may be a financial mystery that you believe needs to be resolved. Could actually be a health mystery. This can often be a problem with health, can't it? And just remember, I'm not giving any medical advice here. This is just a lifestyle thing. And with health, there are often questions about why something is going wrong, why maybe you don't have enough energy, or it's maybe some chronic complaint. We all have chronic complaints, by the way. So my understanding of chronic is just some health issue that's been going on for years and years and years. It's not going to kill us, but it's really annoying. Or it may not be our chronic health issue. It may be someone else's chronic health issue. And there are all sorts of theories about what this thing is caused by. And now might actually be a good time to have another look at it. Do some research. Think about it. Ask that question. And it's just possible that you might find some answers, or at least you might find a new approach. And again, this is not necessarily for you. It's not necessarily about your health. It might be about someone else's health. It could be about the health of the community, whatever it is. But doing a little bit of research, not a little bit of research, doing a lot of research, it is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But if you can do that, then I think that would be really worthwhile. Additionally, Scorpio, Venus is starting to make a trine to Mars. I haven't mentioned this before, but Venus is going retrograde. Venus will make a trine to Mars. Venus will actually come to a standstill, and then it will go forward again. It will make another trine to Mars. And this current trine to Mars is getting really close. And Venus trine Mars for you, Scorpio, I would regard that as being an excellent aspect. And it's an aspect that allows you to really come over as being an interesting and exciting person. It's not in a sort of super extroverted, garish kind of way, but rather someone who's definitely got something to offer, who's got something very unique to offer. And that's what you can do over the next few days. And with this approach, you have a chance to really get on with people, and maybe to get on with specific people. So, do look at the whole area of relationships. I know you've got other things on your mind, but it just might be that it's a good time for impressing one or two people who either are important or who could become important. Sagittarius, there is activity in Gemini, and of course Gemini is your opposite sign. So when we have activity in Gemini, we automatically think about relationships. As you know, I'm wary always about talking about relationships, because I think it's something that maybe people worry about too much, certainly in an astrological setting. But we have to be honest about the symbolism. Moon-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini in a Sagittarian chart, classic astrology, that suggests that relationships should be working well. It's good for romance, good for one's love life. That's how Moon-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini is often interpreted in the Sagittarian chart. And it's better than that, because the moon isn't just making a conjunction to Jupiter. It's also making a sextile to the sun, and the moon sextiles the sun. You could say the moon sextile the sun is the cosmic marriage. The sun and the moon are these male-female principles. They're in sextile and making a good aspect. And so Sagittarius, that does indicate that relationships are an area of growth and expansion, and ideally you should not be alone. But that depends on the situation, doesn't it? And if relationships are not a priority, you should at least consider how the world can have an impact on you, because from a Sagittarian viewpoint, Gemini is the other. It's everything that you are not. And so if you think that you are in complete control, that everything that happens is down to you, I think you might be wrong. And so look at how the world is impacting you, and don't be afraid of that impact, because Moon Jupiter conjunction is a fortunate aspect. I mean, almost always a fortunate aspect, and it does suggest that you can benefit from something happening from the outside, something coming in from the outside. So if you were to shut off the outside world, then you would be shutting off the possibility of benefiting from that conjunction between the moon and Jupiter. And additionally, the sun is making a sextile to Jupiter. Now that Sun Jupiter sextile is not exact, but it's getting there. It's around 3 degrees from exactitude. So over the next few days, that gives you a great feeling of who you are and what you can do, and it can be very centering. And you shouldn't feel that your approach is so individualistic, so unique, that you can't share it. Actually, you can share it, and you have got stuff to share. And it's not about making compromises. It's not about thinking, well, you've got to deal with other people, so you've got to moderate your message. You don't have to moderate your message at all. Your message is absolutely fine. And this is a time for being yourself, and you can be yourself in company with other people, and you will get the appreciation you deserve. Okay, you might have to choose your audience, but that is definitely something that you can do. And it may also be about presentation and demonstration. It's not about explaining things. In fact, it's a day when you should avoid trying to explain things. It doesn't suit you. So if you spend a lot of time talking today, telling people why your approach is best, trying to justify yourself, then you might feel that you're hitting a brick wall, because other people just won't understand. They won't get it. They won't have the imagination to see what you're talking about. And it will be a very frustrating exercise. And so instead, you have to demonstrate things. You have to explain, why something. No, sorry, you don't. Sorry, let me clear. You don't have to explain anything. You mustn't explain things. Explanation is a bad thing. And so instead you just have to present it, and you have to do it, and you have to act it out, and you have to be enthusiastic. And once people see something in action, they'll realize that they want to be part of it. And so that's the way in which you need to advertise yourself. Explanations and trying to use logic, that's not the right approach. But you're a Sagittarius, you know that. Capricorn, you should try to be a little bit trusting today. I mean, not everyone can be trusted. Sometimes you can be let down, and you may often feel that you have to micromanage to have any chance of getting things done, because if you leave people to their own devices, well, they're just capable of anything, and maybe bad things can happen. But if you give people a chance, then I think today you might be pleasantly surprised, and they have a better understanding of what needs to be done than maybe you give them credit for. And so that doesn't mean to say that you have to put yourself entirely at the mercy of other people. That's not necessary. But just try to back off a little. See what they can do, and when you see that they're getting things right, that is going to give you sort of an increased level of confidence. But even if other people don't matter, even if you just refuse to trust people, that's still, I think it can be an effective day when, at the very least, you accomplish a great deal. And what we have is a sextile aspect between the moon and the sun. Now, as I've tried to indicate with that moon sextile sun could be useful as far as getting on with other people is concerned. It does create some trust, or it can create trust if you're prepared to let go. And it does indicate that you might be pleasantly surprised. But even if you decide to keep that moon sextile sun to yourself, you don't want to involve other people in it, in that case, well, you can certainly trust yourself, and you can trust yourself to do whatever needs to be done. And so, whatever that vision is for how you want things to be by the end of the day, then that vision can be satisfied, and you can feel that you're really achieving something. Moon sextile sun, additionally, can say something about health. Traditionally, moon sextile sun is a healthy aspect. It's life-giving. It's life-affirming, and that may say something about your own health. So consider your own health, and consider some of the ideas you might have recently had about improving your health and making yourself even healthier. Again, I'm talking about lifestyle here. I'm not giving medical advice, but with that moon sextile sun, there are things you can do to really make yourself feel better and freer. And you want to be in a situation where you are responsible for your own health, where outside actions don't undermine you. So outside actions, well, it could be the garbage you eat, buying food from the outside. You have no control about what additives are put in the food. It could be about the air you breathe. You can't really control polluters. And so there are choices you can make, but it does seem with this moon sextile sun, you can make the right choices, and you'll start to become aware of what choices you would have to make in order to be in full control, or at least be in as much control as you possibly can of your own body and the way you feel. And so, Capricorn, that might be something you really want to work on. I'm not saying you have to. If you don't want to worry about health, you don't have to. I just do see a significator here relating to health and relating to good health, and I thought, Capricorn, that it might be a good idea to consider that. Finally, as I said yesterday, you remain ever so slightly accident prone. And one reason might be is that Mars is starting to make a trine to Saturn. This Mars trine Saturn is, I think it's going to be exact on Friday. And you might think, oh, that's nice, it's a trine. A trine is a good aspect, but trine between Mars and Saturn, you could say, relates to something of the nature of an accident, or being in too much of a hurry and you make a mistake and you break something, or you trip. When you break something, maybe it's just breaking a material object. You don't want it to be doing yourself an injury, but yeah, just take that into account, and don't be in a massive rush, and consider the impact of what you're doing. Again, I'm not trying to scare you or make you paranoid. I just thought I should point that out. Aquarius, there is a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter today. There's also a sextile between the Moon and the Sun. And from an Aquarian view, I would have said that was pretty good. It does mean that today can be pretty effective for you, and you can be yourself, and you probably are going to have more freedom than usual. So, if there's something you want to do, something you've been meaning to do, then now might be your chance. And you shouldn't worry too much about other people's expectations. In fact, one of the first aspects the Moon makes when it moves into Gemini is a trine to Pluto. So that Moon trine Pluto, okay, you might feel that more if you're in, say, Australia or Asia than if you're in the Americas, but still, I think there is a Moon trine Pluto feeling, at least at the beginning of the day. And this Moon trine Pluto allows you to consider the possibility of creating change and transformation. And if something isn't good enough for you, or you feel you're being held back, then you can take active steps to create change. And it's not going to be as difficult as you'd imagined. And the Moon moves on and it makes a sextile to the Sun. And that Moon sextile Sun, it's good for everyone. I think it's particularly good for you. It reminds you of what is possible. And sometimes Aquarius needs that reminder. Aquarius is a Saturn-ruled sign, and you can take things seriously, and perhaps sometimes too seriously. And you might have forgotten that you had a particular ability, and now might be a time for a reminder with that Moon sextile Sun. And as soon as you start talking about something, discussing something, or just demonstrating it, then it becomes clear that you have got what it takes, and you can act in a way that is free thinking and independent, and is actually pretty impressive. And you're going to also benefit from the fact that the Moon is conjunct Jupiter. It's a great aspect, Moon conjunct Jupiter. And not least because it's in Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, and that allows you to, really be yourself. I was going to say show off, but you don't have to show off actually with Moon conjunct Jupiter. It's okay to just do something on your own. If you don't have anyone appreciating what you're doing, well, so what? And you as an Aquarian, you appreciate that more than anyone. Again, it goes back to being independent-minded. You do what you want, and within reason, and you don't care too much about other people's response. Although I think the response can be excellent today, because of that moon conjunct Jupiter. Also, Aquarius, we have got Sun sextile Jupiter, and this Sun sextile Jupiter is an aspect that's just starting to take shape. And it's exact at the end of a week. And this Sun sextile Jupiter does really allow you to present yourself very well. It's got a lot to do with communication and maybe a little bit of persuasion. So if you want to get other people excited about something, to make them enthusiastic, then this is very much something you can do. Because, this Sun sextile Jupiter, it's about the marriage of fire and air. Sun in Aries, Sun exalted in Aries. Aries is, of course, a fire sign, and sextile Jupiter in Gemini, an air sign. So Sun sextile Jupiter is, it's about the marriage of those two positive elements, and that's what you can bring to bear. You have the enthusiasm, but you also have the ideas, and it just comes over as being exciting. So yes, Aquarius, you can indeed come over as being an exciting person. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you have to make a fool of yourself, that you have to make a lot of noise. Just allow that natural enthusiasm that you have somewhere to bear fruit, to come out, to really present itself, and other people really can't fail to be impressed. But again, if you don't want to impress other people, if you just want to do things your own way, that's absolutely not a problem. One other aspect that I should mention that is starting to form is a conjunction between Venus and Saturn. It's not quite there yet, but it's almost there. And so Venus-Saturn conjunction has a rather difficult reputation, and certainly for relationships it can be a problem. But it's you, Aquarius. Saturn is your ruler. Venus is moving towards Saturn, and Venus conjunct Saturn may actually make you more easygoing. Venus is in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and it may allow you to show a softer side to your personality. And it's starting. I think you could already feel it, but over the next couple of days, you can be incredibly sympathetic. And so if you have a chance to show that sympathy and be able to show that you understand other people's priorities and other people's, perhaps their fears as well as their hopes, I think that will really put you in good stead. Pisces. Pisces, the main aspect today is probably a conjunction between the Moon and Jupiter. And this Moon-Jupiter conjunction is in Gemini. And, it highlights the fact that, Jupiter has been in Gemini since, I think, May of last year, and it stays in Gemini until June. And so the Moon making a conjunction to Jupiter may encourage you to sort of look back at what's been going on over the last, nearly a year, and to ask yourself, how secure are you feeling? Do you feel better, or do you feel worse, or are you not quite sure? And if you are feeling a little bit insecure, by insecure, I absolutely don't mean that in a psychological sense. I just mean that like, feeling grounded, having both feet firmly on the ground, making sure that you've got backup systems, that you're confident about the future, whatever the future might bring. And so that's the kind of question that the Moon-Jupiter conjunction may be asking of you. And, give it some thought. You probably made some progress over the last year, but you're still aware that certain things still need to be sorted out. And perhaps, Pisces, you need to take a note of them. And, over the next few months, there may be things you can do. There are going to be a few Moon-Jupiter conjunctions left in Gemini. So we probably got, 2, 3, we'll have one in May, June. So we probably got, about May, June. You've probably got 2 more Moon-Jupiter conjunctions left before Jupiter moves into Gemini, moves into Cancer. And so, take advantage of the very least of the insights. And if you feel that something is missing, you're going to know it. And then you'd actually have a chance to do something about it. And that might be a note. That can be, if you like, your homework for the next month between now and the next Moon-Jupiter conjunction. And additionally, the Moon doesn't just make a conjunction to Jupiter. It also makes a sextile to the Sun, and that Moon sextile Sun, I think, could also be related to security, perhaps money as well. Money and security. Money can be security, and it may be that you have a chance to do something of a financial nature that makes you feel better. So any activity relating to money that you conduct today should work out, and you have to be very clear about it. You don't want to just ask people questions gingerly. You actually have to take action. And if you try to talk about money, and if you try to discuss money, then that might not work out. You might feel that people don't want to listen to you. They'd rather think about something else, or they're afraid of talking about money. So it's not the talking that matters. It's about you actually engaging with a financial problem, maybe, and just being very clear about it and being very determined and trying to keep discussion down to a minimum. It's about making demands. If you want to make demands today, you can do it. And the reason you're going to be very good at making demands is because you can do it in such a way that doesn't annoy people, that they just listen to your demand, and there's a good chance they'll just give in. Or, okay, I'm not saying they will give in, but you've got perhaps a better chance than average, with that Moon sextile Sun, and also the fact that the Moon is not just making a sextile to the Sun, but it's also making a conjunction to Jupiter. And one other thing I should say is that it's not just about your security and well-being. You actually at the moment have the capacity for making other people feel secure. And so if there's anything you want from someone, it may not be just about making demands. It certainly shouldn't be about trying to explain something, because if you try to explain something, I don't think you'll get anywhere. It's just making someone feel at home. And if you can make someone feel at home, then there's a very good chance that they will do things your way, and if you make some gentle demand, they're likely to say fine. So that's it, Pisces. Looks like being an okay day, provided you take advantage of that Moon conjunct Jupiter and that Moon sextile Sun. It really does allow you to have an influence. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today, Wednesday, from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 51, which is thunderbolts. And this hexagram has no moving lines. Now, that's kind of strange, because 51 thunderbolts is, as its name suggests, is about action, things happening, and we weren't expecting them, and there's a sense of shock. We think for a moment that it's all a disaster. Everything we've been working on just is going to collapse. And one image of thunderbolts is of an invading army, And we think that if, I don't know, foreign troops walk through our city, that's the end of the world, that our life has come to an end. And the I Ching says, I mean, I suppose this is sort of ancient China. These things might happen, different warlords moving into different places. But the I Ching tells us it's not the end of the world. You know, the external world might have changed. We might have a new government. We might have a new warlord in control. But the basic routines of life are not going to change. And it's the same with the thunderbolt. With thunderbolts, there is a big change. We think it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world at all. And one image that the I Ching uses with this is of incense being put on the fire, some sort of ritualistic thing. And even though there is thunder and earthquake, whatever, we don't drop any of the incense. It goes onto the fire and it's fine. So it's important that we don't exaggerate. And, additionally, with no moving lines, there may be a sense of shock, but actually nothing happens. It's like one of those days where you just feel that something bad is going to happen, and you just feel it. And I can remember, I think I was a teenager, and I was drinking coffee, and I'd only just started drinking coffee, and it was 5 a.m, and I had drunk this cup of coffee, and I for some reason I put 7 spoonfuls of coffee in it, and it made me really quite paranoid, and I was convinced that there was going to be a nuclear war at the time. I was just convinced. I had this incredible sense of doom. Obviously it passed. There wasn't a nuclear war. This would have been in the 70s. And this might be this sense of thunderbolts, and we think that something bad is going to happen, but there is no moving line, so nothing does happen. And to get some kind of insight about this hexagram, we could look at the nuclear hexagram. And the nuclear hexagram is the hexagram in the middle when we knock out the top and the bottom lines. And the hexagram in the middle is obstruction. So that's perhaps the hexagram is underlining it. So obstruction is about being in a position where we can't really move. And, we might want to go forward, but we can't move forward. At best, we should stay where we are, but we should probably retreat. And so that might say something about our position. We feel that things are bad. We feel that, we're stuck, and we're dealing with this situation that just looks really grim. And that may say something about our perception of what's happening in society, in the economy. Because I'm making this video on Tuesday, and I think there's going to be some announcement about tariffs today, which of course this video is designed to be Wednesday, so how are we going to respond to that? But it's not just about tariffs, it's just the world in which we're living in. It just might seem that things are really dramatic, but there are no moving lines. And maybe that's a good thing that there are no moving lines. It means that actually not much is going to happen. And one place where things are going on is in France. And in France, we've had Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Rally, this right-wing party, has been banned from standing for office. So she was going to stand for the presidency of France in 2027. And she was doing pretty well in the polls. And this court has just banned her from standing for public office. And so one has to think, what does this mean? And I I think it's kind of strange because my understanding of French politics is, I mean, again, I don't know much about French politics, but you have presidential elections, and or you often have someone like Marine Le Pen. Her father stood, Jean-Marie Le Pen, he died in January, so he often stood for the president. Certainly, at least once, he tried to be president. He could be the number two candidate, but always that candidate from what was the National Front. Now it's the National Rally. The opposition mobilized in the end, and it's really difficult for a party of the supposed far right. I mean, I suppose Jean-Marie Le Pen was far right. I'm not sure if you could really categorize Marine Le Pen as far right. In fact, there are certain aspects of her policies which are pretty left wing. So I wouldn't want to use that phrase of far right to describe her. But there's a perception that she's far right, and people have, always the country has been rallies with the opponent. That's how Macron won the election, and people before that. So I would guess that even though she was doing really well in the polls, that she never had any realistic chance of being elected in 2027, and that's just a kind of a media story. I mean, again, I don't know much about French politics, so maybe the political establishment was overreacting. Of course, we don't know to what extent it is a political establishment. It was a court in France, but I think the judiciary is quite politicized in France, particularly at the higher levels, and so there's a real possibility it was a political decision, and we don't know who was involved in it. But it's interesting that a lot of people in the political establishment and even on the left are not happy with this decision to ban Marine Le Pen from standing again, because there's always a fear that it's going to actually boost her case, and it's going to give the right, or the far right, as the establishment like to describe it, give them further support. And it may actually mobilize support and sympathy for Marine Le Pen. So it seems to me to be a fairly sort of self-destructive thing for the establishment to do, and everyone is saying this. I think there was even an article in The Economist was suggesting that this might be a response. And so, let's start off by thinking about Marine Le Pen and her horoscope. So, here's Marine Le Pen's chart. She having a French chart. The great thing about people born in France is that we have their times, and so she was born 11:20 a.m. and on August the 5th. So she is a Leo. And I've always felt with Marine Le Pen's horoscope that there's something rather unlucky about her. I never really felt that she would become French president. And for example, there's her Saturn in Aries. That Saturn in Aries is not good. Saturn is fallen in Aries, and it's in the 7th house, and it's actually in Aries in both Vedic astrology and in Western astrology. And additionally, she's got Mars square Saturn. Mars square Saturn is incredibly frustrating. Everything is difficult, and you can see perhaps Mars square Saturn at work when she was in court. I think she walked out as judgment went against her, and okay, she's got Mars in the 10th house. She's got angular Mars Saturn square, so that Mars on the midheaven propels her to the heights. And Mars is a male planet, and it may say something about her father. I mean, obviously, it must have helped in terms of her political career. Her father being Jean-Marie Le Pen, who founded the Front National. And some would say that Mars in the last degree of the sign is rather unfortunate. I'm not sure if I entirely subscribe to that theory, but a lot of astrologers, and I'm sure a lot of you listening would regard that Mars as being difficult because of it being in the final degree of Cancer, and so it is a difficult chart. And her moon is in Capricorn her moon's in the third house, so it's the moon joys in the third house, and the moon may represent the people, and she has become more popular in France, and she has been more mainstream, and there's something about her as harmless. She's relatively harmless. She's not that extreme, and I think she's into cats. She's into breeding cats. I mean, that's part of who she is, and so she was becoming part of the system, and then this happens, and she was probably never going to get elected, at least as it stands. We shouldn't make the mistake, by the way, of seeing Marine Le Pen as an individual. I mean, as a private individual, of course, she's an individual, but she is part of the system, and being a leading politician in France, she's going to be influenced by collective processes. And I just wanted to quickly look at Marine Le Pen's Vedic chart, because I really think that Saturn is important. And so turning to her Vedic chart, let's see, here it is. Here's her Vedic chart, and so from a Vedic point of view, she has got Virgo rising. This is Virgo, and so she's got Virgo rising, and because she's got Libra in the Western chart, so she's got Rahu. She's got Ketu, the South Node, in the first house, and she's got Rahu in the seventh house. And so her Ketu actually works quite well because it's in Virgo. Rahu and Ketu do well in Gemini and in Virgo and Gemini in Vedic astrology. I also think in Western astrology as well, although people don't really use the exaltations and so forth of North and South Node. But if you William Lilly, for example, I think he mentions the fact that North Node works well in Gemini, and so that is suggestive of a life where things just happen. Having South Node in the seventh, North Node in the first house, and then there's her Saturn. So Saturn was in her seventh in Aries in her Western chart. In her Vedic chart, it stays in Aries, but it's in the eighth. That's unfortunate. Now, if she had Saturn in Aries in the seventh house, that would have given her some good fortune, because Saturn would be Dikbala. It would have had directional strength, because in Vedic astrology, Saturn in the seventh can be really powerful. You look at Nicola Sturgeon's chart. Nicola Sturgeon had Saturn in Aries in the seventh house. Yeah, she eventually fell from grace, but she stayed in power for ages and ages and ages. And that probably had something to do with her Saturn having Dikbala in the seventh when it was in Aries. But in Marine Le Pen's chart, her Saturn is in the eighth house in her Vedic chart. So I think that makes her Saturn a real problem, and it is really difficult for her. And it could well but just be preventing her from being successful. I mean, she has been successful, but I do just get this sense with Marine Le Pen that there's something about her that is somewhat unlucky. Now, as far as the dashas are concerned, she is she's in her Rahu Dasha. Now, by the way, just in case you haven't watched previous videos, I mean, there are lots of other videos on Vedic astrology. I'm not a Vedic astrologer, but in Vedic astrology, life is divided up into 9 periods, each one period ruled by the 9 planets of Vedic astrology. That's Sun, Moon, through to Saturn, plus North Node and the South Node. And she is in her Rahu Dasha. And so she's been in her Rahu Dasha since 2014. And she's got the Rahu in the 7th house. Now, that might say something about her enemies, but also with a Rahu Dasha, Rahu Dasha is the head of the demon. It's very ambitious, the Rahu Dasha. There are things you want, but things can be very unstable. And she entered the South Node, the Ketu Subdasha, on July the 24th, 2024. And she's in her Rahu Mahadasha and her Ketu Subdasha from July 2024 until August 2025. And so this particular period, Rahu Mahadasha, Ketu Subdasha, is a really crazy period, especially as she has got South Node in the 1st house, North Node in the 7th house, Ketu in the 1st, Rahu in the 7th. And so that represents complete upheaval. So the beginning of the year, she lost her father. I mean, okay, her father was 96 years old, so that's a good age. But her father did die, I think, on January the 7th of this year. So that was possibly a blow for her, even though politically, I think she'd had a bit of a falling out with her father. But still, it must have been difficult for her. And then we've had this latest thing with the court. And the court banning her from standing for future office. I think she's allowed to keep her seat in Parliament until the next election, but she's banned from standing again. And so her Vedic chart does really indicate that this is a difficult time for her. And in her Vedic chart, this Rahu Mahadasha Ketu Subdasha, does persist until August of 2025. You can imagine this will be all the toing and froing about the court. I mean, I think she's appealing, but I gather that the chances of the appeal working are quite low. I mean, I don't know about the French system from what I've read. And then she moves into Rahu Mahadasha and the Venus Subdasha, and that is the major dasha, minor dasha, which will cover her during the election. And her Venus is in the 12th house, but it is conjunct Jupiter. I didn't really want to talk too much about that. I mean, you can see that there are pluses and minuses. Now, one interesting thing, which perhaps illustrates the power of Vedic astrology, is that this announcement from the court happened on Monday. It happened on Monday the 31st. On the 29th, on Friday, I think it was Saturday the 29th, Saturn moved into sidereal Pisces, and it therefore made a conjunction between itself and the transiting North Node in Pisces. And of course, Pisces is her 7th house. So the moment Saturn moved into her sidereal 7th house was the moment her enemies revealed themselves. 2 days later, there was this court hit. The court made its announcement. And I think that this is the reminder of the power of Vedic astrology. And if you're looking at doing transits, I'd always keep an eye on the Vedic approach, because it's quite uncanny the way it happens so quickly. That the moment Saturn changed sign was when in the sidereal zodiac, it really hit Marine Le Pen. So going back to Marine Le Pen's Western chart, and just wanted to look at a few other things. Good, might be useful to look at her returns, and so here is Marine Le Pen's solar return for 2024, set for where she was born, and this solar return has Uranus on the ascendant, and so this solar return is suggesting that it's going to be a difficult year for a tumultuous year. Yeah, the year when she lost her father, and also the year when she's just had this ban placed on her. And also look at the moon. When you're looking at a solar return, always do look at the moon. The moon can give some idea about timing, and the moon is starting to make a square to Uranus, and so the moon is about 8 degrees short of a square to Uranus. So if you count 8 degrees, I think 8 degrees from August, so that would be August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So that would probably take us to about now. So around 8 degrees, 8 months after the start of the the solar return, around 8 months after her birthday, was when she had this shock of this court announcement, because people were not really expecting it. So her solar return does indicate problems, and additionally, there would be her lunar return. So we've got the solar return of the big picture, and then a lunar return we might want to sort of close in at a more limited period of time. So here's her lunar return for March the 22nd, just before the court judgment. Again, we see Mars rising and Saturn on the midheaven, and so it's a difficult lunar return. Okay, it doesn't have Uranus on the ascendant, but it has Mars on the ascendant as well, and so this is the lunar return where she had all the problems. The moon, of course, is at 2 Capricorn, and the moon is making a square to the sun, making a square to the Venus, so the moon is under pressure there, but having Saturn on the midheaven, Mars on the ascendant is really tough for that lunar return. So we have some indications that Marine Le Pen is in trouble. Is this the end of her political career? I mean, I don't like her chart. I think that her chart is unfortunate. I never really got the feeling that she would ever be French president. There is a but there. I'll come on to that but. But first of all, I wanted to look at someone else who's going to be influenced by this, and that would be Jourdain Bardella. So Jourdain Bardella, another leader of the National Front, not the National Front, of course, that's changed its name, of the National Rally, as the party changed its name to. And Jourdain Bardella, people are saying, oh, well, now that she can't stand for president, well, what about Jourdain Bardella? So, he is, where's he gone? So here's his chart. Jourdain Bardella is incredibly young. He's just had his Saturn return. He's 29, and he won't be 30 until September. And this is Jourdain Bardella's horoscope. You can see that he really has just had his Saturn return, and Jourdain Bardella has Sun opposition Saturn. So Saturn has just crossed his Sun. Saturn has just made the opposition to the Sun. And one question you might have about Jourdain Bardella, is he presidential material? And he's a Virgo. You don't normally associate Virgos with the heights of political office. You think they're sort of more cautious and modest for that. Ivan the Terrible was a Virgo. So was Lyndon B. Johnson. Again, whatever you think of Lyndon B. Johnson was a political expert, an absolute expert in terms of politics. I would have said that politically, Lyndon B. Johnson was probably the best operator since the Second World War in the U.S. I mean, he really knew how to be a politician, and he was a Virgo. And Jourdan Bardella, he doesn't have a lot of fire in his chart, but he does have Jupiter in Gemini, Jupiter in Sagittarius, and you could argue that Jourdan Bardella's Jupiter is actually very strong, even though it appears to be in the 12th house. Because if you were to use the whole sign house system, you would say he had Jupiter in the first. And Jupiter's in Sagittarius, so Jupiter is a male planet in a male sign. Jupiter is a daytime planet, and he was born in the hours of daylight. And additionally, Jupiter functions best during the day above the horizon, and Jupiter is above the horizon. So Jupiter is stronger than it appears to be on the surface. And certainly if you use whole sign houses, Jupiter really does come into its own. And also he's got North Node on the midheaven, which is fortunate. Midheaven, it is the right thing for him to be doing, to be looking for political office, to lead his country, whether he succeeds or not. It is the right thing for him to be doing. He's got Mercury close to the midheaven, even though his Venus is in Virgo. Venus obviously fallen in Virgo. It is in mutual reception to Mercury, and he's got Mars in Scorpio. So you might say that Jourdan Bardella has quite a good chart, though he is going to be under a lot of pressure, and one wonders whether he's really got what it takes. I think that certainly at the moment he does have Saturn issues. He's got, he's just had his Saturn return. He's got Saturn opposition his Venus, and we might see this as being about responsibility. I mean, he is now potentially in a position where he has to stand in the presidential elections in 2027, unless the court reverses itself, or at least if the appeal works. So that might be how the Sun-Saturn opposition works. So the Sun-Saturn opposition could be about political leadership, reaching the heights just through hard work and determination. But still, it is difficult. And particularly with Saturn opposition Venus, and Saturn opposition Venus, how much of a sympathetic person does he appear to be from the viewpoint of the French public? Will they trust him? Will they vote for him? And at the moment, I do have my doubts whether he's quite the right person at this particular moment. And look at his IC. He's got his IC at 2140 Aries, and you can see by eye, if you look at his Sun-Saturn opposition, that Saturn is about 30 degrees from his IC. Now, what does that tell us? And the Sun is about 30 degrees from his midheaven. Well, that suggests to us, if we use solar arc directions, that when he's approximately 30, something might happen. So that this is perhaps his first sort of challenge. And so before I look at solar arc directions, I just wanted to quickly look at the opening of the polls during the second round of the French elections on April the 25th, 2027. So at that time. There's Saturn. There's transiting Saturn on his, moving towards his IC, which I'm not sure how good that is if he was going to be standing for president. Having transiting Saturn close to your IC may be a little bit difficult. Also, transiting Sun. The transiting Sun is at 4 degrees 49 Taurus. So that transiting Sun is going to be opposition his Mars. That sounds like quite an angry combination for his to be standing for president. Is that about disappointment? Is him getting really annoyed about something, or is it a physical danger? I mean, assassinations do happen. He would have to watch his safety if he was standing for election. And then there is his solar arc direction. So here are his solar arc directions. What kind of solar arc directions is he experiencing at the moment? And again, his solar arc directed Saturn is moving towards his IC. His solar arc directed Sun is at 19 degrees 18 Libra. And that means at the time of the presidential elections, the Sun will be on his midheaven. Now, that could be a signature of success, but Saturn will be exactly on his IC. So this whole Sun-Saturn opposition, you move it in Jordan Bardella's chart, is moving onto his MC-IC axis. So that's important. It's happening around the time of a 2027 presidential election. So that is something we need to look out for. At the moment, I'm not entirely convinced that Jordan Bardella is presidential material, at least at the moment. But I haven't really looked at the matter in enough detail. It depends what you want to focus on. And I also think that this it may relate to the collective and how we see Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, especially when we think about what happened to Trump. I mean, Trump should have been doomed. I mean, Trump should not have won the last election. Obviously I forecasted he would win, but it would have been very easy for the Democrats, as soon as Biden won, to dispose of Trump. All Biden had to do was just pardon him, patronize him, tell Trump that, he's an awful human being, but, we have to worry about the office of the presidency. Let's pardon him. Trump could tell the local district attorneys to just leave him be, let him do whatever he wants. It would have just disempowered Trump. But this whole obsession with lawfare and wanting to get him through the courts, even if it was strictly speaking correct, played a big role in getting him re-elected. It made him constantly relevant. And it was almost like the Democrats knew at some level that Trump was going to win. And you didn't really have to be an astrologer to know that he was going to win. You just had to watch the behavior of the Democrats. And as far as me forecasting that Trump was going to win, I was actually looking at Kamala Harris's chart mainly. I wasn't doing it on the basis of Trump's chart. I think there were some problems with Trump's chart. So I'm of the view that it wasn't necessarily a sure thing, but the Democrats kind of made it a sure thing, not through their lawfare and by choosing a completely hopeless candidate. And this may be how the collective works. And in Europe, the collective is working overtime. The collective knows that things are changing. It knows that, as far as I can see, that the whole Western liberal, I won't say tradition, but where we're at, this elitist Western liberal thing is coming to an end. And the people that know that most, that are most connected to the collective, are the elites themselves. Maybe people like judges, they're all connected to this. And they, at an unconscious level, know that in the end, the forces that people like Marine Le Pen and Jourdain Bardella represent, that in the end, those forces are going to triumph. And that explains their behavior. That's not to say that Marine Le Pen will become president, or Jourdain Bardella will become president, but in the end, those forces will triumph. And I think we know that through their behavior. And so it may be that they're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they were to just leave Marine Le Pen alone, she'd stand for the presidency and she'd lose, because you always are able to rally a majority against her. But by forcing the pace, it's like the collective is almost manipulating the elites to do its bidding. The elites are just pushing it forward, and so maybe actually that is what is going on. And if the collective were relaxed, if the collective knew that the forces that Marine Le Pen represent were never going to get anywhere, they wouldn't be making such a fuss about it. But they are making a fuss, and we see this, across Europe. And I think that is the only explanation. Yeah, we can actually observe the collective. I probably need to make a video about this so I can really put my thoughts together. But you can often tell what's going to happen, not with astrology, not just with astrology, but you just can look at the behavior and the behavior of the elites and the judiciary in parts of Europe, whether it's Romania or France, or even with Germany trying to ban the AfD. They're not relaxed because they know how it's all going to work out in the end. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Marine Le Pen, and we'll see how it works out. And I will be doing more videos on French politics, even though I don't know a great deal about the subject, but I do know a little bit about astrology, so maybe astrology can give us some idea. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.